Hi, it's Yvonne from the Fabric Hut. Hey, I'm so excited to walk you through this particular project. This is the Sunshine and Pollen quilt. Congratulations on your purchase. Let's get right to it. On this quilt, we're going to make some little snowball corners. We're going to make some half square triangles. We're even going to make some split quarter square triangles. So, a couple new techniques maybe for some of you, but I'm going to show them to you one at a time. And we're going to get through this quilt in no time. So, hey, let's stop talking and get right over to the sewing machine. Well, let's just start right at the beginning here at the sky blocks. We are going to need to make 10 of these blocks. Okay, so you have been given 84 pieces that are 3.5 by 6.5. So you have ample because you're really only going to need 80 of them. So if you make a mistake, at least you have some spares, which is always nice. Okay, so the first step we're going to do is we're going to take 2 of them and we are going to just sew them together right down the long side. And we're going to do this through the whole stack of 80 blocks. You can just chain piece them right along. I have worked ahead a little, so you don't have to watch me sew 82 of these. We're going to just, let me move my camera a little bit there so it doesn't shift. It was sitting on my table. Okay, so you don't have to watch me make 84 of these or 80 of them because that's a little bit boring. But, so I'm just going to do a couple here. And you're going to make sure you use a nice 1/4 inch seam allowance so that it's consistent all the way through. So if you can set your machine to a 1/4 inch or put a guide of some sort, that will give you the best outcome. Now, I want to show you one of the blocks that I have finished. This is one of the blocks. And as you can see, it's all the same fabric, but it's pieced. So that lends the question, why didn't you just give us a square of fabric? And that's a good question. I thought that when I first saw it too. It's like, well, couldn't I have done that with just a square? Yes, you can. But because this quilt, right here's our picture, has a lot of open space in here. If that were just plain fabric, 2 things would happen. The bigger blocks would make it not lay quite as smooth as some of these blocks that have been pieced. But the other thing is it gives it stability and it gives it movement. So in that big blank extra space, having a block like this with some lines, it kind of just adds some movement to the background of your quilt. It's subtle, but it does make a difference at the end. And the extra seams in it give you some stability so nothing droops or hangs funny. Okay, so you have done your 80 of them in half like this. Okay, now I want you to take those and I want you to press them all to one side. Let me double check something. She may have you be pressing them open. Yes, she has you pressing your seams open. So if you want, you can press them all open. This is a personal preference thing. Some people really enjoy pressing open. Some people really enjoy pressing to the side. I think that whatever you're most comfortable with, that's what you need to do. I will press these open because that's what she has done. She being the designer. And don't you just love the things she comes up with? Some of her little designs are so fabulous. So here we go. And I just get my finger in there and press that one open too. So after you get it all pressed open, you are going to have 40 blocks that look like this. Okay, now it's time to take those 40 blocks, and right now they're in, I call them twosies because it has 2 pieces. We need them to go into foursies. So looking at our pattern that I just covered here, you want your top block to be a vertical block and then a horizontal block right next to it. and a start with horizontal and go vertical. If you get your directions right, okay? So it looks like this, and you do want them all to be the same so that it will flow the right direction, okay? So we're going to just fold these and sew them together. And when I did mine, I stacked all 10 blocks just like this. 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, and 10 here. So I would take the top 2 and sew them together. Just like that. And then I would take the bottom 2 and sew them together right next to it and chain piece them. And then I would go back to my top row and put those next. And then the bottom row. So you would have all of them. You would end up with 20 pieces with the top row, bottom row, top row, bottom row. And that way you can easily just take this and trim them apart every other block so that they're still hooked in the middle, and you can easily then sew your last block. Now when you get to this point, your pressing is a little bit different. So right here you have a horizontal seam, and here you have a vertical. If you press so that they're all going towards the vertical, right here, you don't have any doubled seams. If you press towards this, you're going to have a little bit of a lump there because already has 2 layers there. When you add this one, then that's more. This just makes it a little bit smoother. So you're going to press them towards the vertical that does not have a seam. And by doing that now, when you put them together, you are able to just nest them together really nicely, and you get that perfect point in the center. So these first blocks are just really quite simple to make and quick. They came together very, very quickly for me. And you will need 10 of these blocks. Alrighty. And then she has you then press them however you want at this point, whether you're pressing them all to one side or not. What I did on mine is I snipped my little stitch right here. And let me show you. I spun my seam. So you can snip your stitch and spin your seam this way. And now you have equal bulk all the way around this center point. Give it a good press, and you are then done with your first 10 blocks of this quilt. How fast was that? So bring it up here, give it a little press, everything out, that down flat. And I know you can't hardly see, my hand is in your way, and I'm sorry about that. But there we go, we are all pressed out, and I have all 10 blocks ready to go. And so just take them and set them aside for now, because we are going to make each of the individual blocks before we start hooking anything together. So that is our first block. You ready for the second one? The next ones are going to be the stem blocks. Now, these are almost the same, but slightly different. You're going to make 8 that looks like this with the blue on the bottom. Then you need 5 that look like this with the light green on the bottom. It's so nice that everything is already pre-cut for you, so you don't even have to worry about cutting these pieces. But what we're going to start with is our 8 3/4 inch squares. You need a light green one and a light blue one. You're going to do it 13 times. I've already done some, so I'm just going to bring up the final one right here. We have a light blue and a green right sides together. If you notice up here on the top of your pattern, the abbreviations for RST means right sides together. When you come up to that here, if you don't know, that's what that means, right sides together. Okay. And we're going to get them all nice and even. Now you do have a little bit of wiggle room on this because they're oversized. Okay, I don't have a long enough ruler to do the whole thing in one, so I'm going to use 2 rulers. If you don't have a long ruler at your sewing table, this is a trick. I'm going to move my camera out so you can see me a little better there. Okay, so actually, you know what? Disregard this. We are not drawing a line diagonally. We are doing this method 4 at a time, which is so much quicker. So we are going to just stack these guys together, and we are going to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way around this block. We don't even have to draw lines for this technique. We're just going to sew all the way around. Now you can sew all the way off and then restart if you want, like that. Cut your thread and then restart. That's absolutely acceptable. Or just because I don't like to cut threads any more often than I have to, I just sew to within 1/4 of an inch. On my machine, I have a line right here that is the 1/4 of an inch from my needle. So I just go up till my fabric is even with that line and turn. And I just turn that corner. The reason it's not really important is because these are going to be trimmed to size. So we do want it in the corner, we want it accurate, but you have a little bit of wiggle room. Okay. Zip through this one to the end. Okay, and there we go. Look how easy that was. And this is going to give us 4 of our half square triangles. Looks kind of funny right now, doesn't it? But that's what it's going to do. It's going to give us 4 of them. So at this point, you're going to get out your cutting mat and your ruler. And we're going to, this cutting mat is not really long enough, but I'm going to do it at an angle. Okay. And like I said, this one is not a long enough ruler to reach all the way across. I have one of those up at my big cutting table, but you know, I'm going to be lazy right now. So I'm going to use 2 rulers. I'm going to start in the very point here. Put that one at that very point, and I'm going to put this one at this very point on the bottom, and I'm going to nest them together. Okay, so they are both accurate, and I'm going to cut from this point up to the top of this ruler, and then I can, by using the edge of that first cut, I can cut the rest of the way. Right there, and now I have 2 triangles. And then I'm going to turn it and do the same thing. Get it on an angle here so I can reach across my board. Those lined all the way back up. If you can't see your corners to line them up really well, line up your design. See? I see how that design is lined up really well right there. Now I know it's lined up. Again, I'm going to use 2 rulers. I only keep small rulers over here at my cutting table or at my sewing table. So sometimes this is the technique I have to use. Sometimes, well, you probably will pick it up and take it to your main cutting station because you will have 13 of these blocks to cut. But since I only have this one, I'm just going to do the cheater way. And there we go, all the way up. Okay, so now I have 4 half square triangle blocks. Look at that. And let's see what she says. She wants us to press them towards the green. Okay, so let's put my cutting mat away so I don't warp it. And we'll bring up our pressing mat. Okay, now because of the way we sewed these, this is our bias edge here. So we're going to have to be very aware throughout this whole process that we don't stretch these edges. But this is not a bias edge. This is our straight of grain. So we can just use our iron to press it open because there won't be any stretch. So just like that, just press it open. Perfect. If it were a bias, we would have to be way more careful because we wouldn't want to stretch our bias. Okay. Now, once we get these all pressed, we do have to trim them down. We are going to trim them down to, let me think, 5.5 inches. Right now, they're slightly bigger than that. That's one of the nice things about half square triangles. Because of all the bias edges, and depending on which way you do it, you still have a bias edge somewhere. So trimming them down gives you the most precision, and you will get your very accurate seams. Okay, here we go. So right now we are measuring at 5 3/4, which is just slightly too big. So how are we going to deal with that? With this, we don't have to match anything in the middle. We don't have to make sure that this angle stays the same. So we can line it up. I'm turning it around so that I can see this side and this side are very, very straight. This side and this side are a little bit off, right? So I'm going to take these two sides and I'm going to put them on the 5.5 inch mark right there. I know this is a little bit harder of a ruler to see. Let me see, because it's got yellow print. Oh, I have one here that's got darker print. Let's do this one so we can see it a little bit better. Okay, so we want 5.5. Here's our 5 and here's our 5. So we're going to go to the half right there. And we have those lined up nicely. So the other thing we have to make sure we have is this line going right up the 45-degree angle line. We want to make sure that that line goes right to the point there and right to the point here. Give it a big hand to hold it down and trim one side. Because I have a small mat here that I can turn, I'm going to go ahead and turn it and trim the other side. Okay, and now that is a square, and I just have to clip off this one more dog ear. Now, what if that weren't quite a square? Let's say that this one, none of these corners are quite square. So what we're going to do this time is find my point again here. We are still at 5 3/4. So I'm going to just bring it in just a little bit. Just a little bit. I've still got my 5.5 line within the bounds of my block, because that's going to be my final measurement. Making sure this one is nice and straight. That's the only one I really have to worry about right this moment. And I'm going to trim up this side. And I'm going to turn it, make sure my ruler doesn't move, and I'm going to trim up this side. And now I'm going to take my whole block and turn it 180 degrees and line it back up. Now I'm going to go right onto that 5.5 inch line right there. My diagonal is still right on my seam, and I'm going to trim up the other two sides. Just like that. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so these are going to be our leaves. Let me do this last couple real quick. Let's see. Oh, that one's really straight, but it's falling off the edge of my mat. Get it on there. Again, line up on your 5.5 if it's nice and square. Get your bias right on there and go. I love my little titanium blades. I typically don't cut sitting down. I typically stand up so I can get enough pressure on them to really get a good cut. But with these titanium blades, and I just put in a nice new one, I can get a good cut even sitting down. Now, that being said, of course, now I'm not going to get a good cut this time just to prove that I'm wrong. Nope, there it goes. Look at that. Nice, even cut off that extra dog ear. 5.5 inches. Last one. Lined up on 5.5. Okay, that one's not quite square. Let's try this corner. If it's square, then I only have to cut 2. Yep, it's square. Sometimes you get off just in the pressing, especially since, like I said, these are biased edges. So they're easily stretched out of place. You just have to be really, really careful that you don't stretch it and get a wonky block. Okay, get all of our trash off there. And now we have our half square triangles. You are going to do that with 11 of your squares, of your blue squares, and 11 of your green squares. You're going to sew them together just like that, okay? And so you will have 44 little pieces. We have done 2 right here, okay? So you are going to end up, you need 52 of these 4-inch blocks. So with 30 or with 13 of them, you are easily going to get that. Okay. Now we're going to assemble your stem blocks. So we're going to go back to referring to our directions, and we are going to turn our blocks so that the green is on the bottom right here. The blue is on top, just like in this picture. And then I want my second one turned so the greens meet in the middle, but the blues are on opposite ends. See that? And we are going to make, how many of those are we going to make? We're going to do 13 of them. Okay, you have 20. We're going to make 2 groups of 26. So we're going to start here, and we're going to do up 13 right here. And you are going to just sew up one side, keeping them all the same direction for that first group. And then for your second group, we need them to go the opposite direction so that the leaves will be on opposite sides of the stem. So on this one, we're going to go with this. We're going to put the green on the top and on the center bottom. So the 2 greens are touching in the middle, one on the top, one on the bottom. So you will have 2 sides of your leaves. And there we go. Now, let me see, does it, and on these, she would like you to press your seams open. Okay? So that is, that you absolutely can press them open. Just like that. And by pressing them open, you see you have an extra piece here and an extra piece here. If you were to press them to one side, one of them would be thicker than the other, and that would give you a little bit of a rough spot in your quilt. So if by pressing them open, that is equally divided, you're going to have a spot on this side and a spot on this side, so nothing is going to seem more than the other. So we'll bring this up. I'm getting too much stuff on my table here, but that's fine. And I knocked something off. I don't care. If I need it, I'll get up and get it. Okay, so pressing it open. Now, did you notice that I finger pressed it first? When I'm pressing open, I always give it a finger press first because it's just easier to keep them open. If you don't, it's just tricky. And then sometimes, and I talked about this in a different video, when you're trying to press open, especially if you have arthritic fingers, or it's sometimes really hard to get them to open. So take your seam ripper, your stiletto, your little scissors or something, and just go in that way with it. See how easy that was to open it? Let's come down here where it's not opened already. And you just can easily poke down inside and get it to start, and then come up with your finger and press it open. I just find that the easiest way to get started to press a seam open. Okay. All righty. Now, if we did this right, we are going to have 13 of them going this way, and we are going to have 13 of them going that way. Do you see how those are forming leaves? Isn't that fun? Okay. Now, we need to take our centerpiece and put it right up the middle. Oh, but look, but wait, we've forgotten something here. So this is not going to fit because we still have a piece to put here. Remember, we needed to do some in green and some in blue? Well, I have some here waiting for me to put them all together. I haven't put all those together yet. I need a couple of them with green, or one of them with green, and then I think I need two of them still. What do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, I need two of them with blue across the bottom. So I will sew them together. I need to do this seam on all of these, and then we will come back and put these on, put this on, and we'll be good to go with this block. Ready, I have my leaves pressed out, folded or lined up in the right way. I'm going to take the top one, put it on the second one, and sew up this side. And I have them 2 sets of each stacked so that I can just go from one to the next and not worry about whether I get things turned. So start there. I'm going to hold these with my left hand so they don't fall off my table. Okay, and then again, just stack the right one on top of the left one, and you can just chain piece your way through and be done really, really quickly. Notice I go about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, maybe even a full inch, and then I stop and I align this point. These are bias here, so you have a little wiggle room to make sure it's right, but you need to be very, very careful that you are not stretching it nor pushing it while you're sewing it, or you are going to end up with curved leaves. And in some quilts, curved leaves are lovely, not in this one. Okay. There we go with these two. And you can see that on these, I did not press my seams open. I was a naughty girl. It's not going to change the integrity of the quilt. It's just, I tend to press to the side each time. It's just the way I like to quilt. No right, no wrong. There we go. And last one. Get that lined up. Give it a start. Stop there. Line back up. And straight on till morning. Okay, and I am not leaving these in pairs. I'm going to just cut them all apart. Okay, I will press those in a minute, but let's go on to this next step. Okay, I have 2 different looks here. I have right sides and left sides right there. So the point is at the bottom. We need to add our pieces to the bottom. So I'm going to put all of these together here with my points at the bottom, like that. Now you can do them in 2 stacks if you want. I'm going to deal with this one first, and I have my pieces that go on the bottom, and I have 2 blues and a green. So for this stack of 3, I'm going to do 2 blues and 1 green. And then for the next stack of 3, I'll do 2 blues and 1 green. So we're just going to, this is very simple, straight right across the bottom, just like that. And I'm going to chain piece these because nothing's better than chain piecing. It not only saves time from having to stop and start, but it saves thread for having tails and whatnot. You know, thread is not the most expensive part of sewing, but it's certainly, to get a good thread, it certainly does cost some money. So you want to make sure that you're being cautious. You don't want to leave whole bunches of long threads and things because that's just kind of wasting it. I use some big spools that I get, and I figured it out one time. I wanted to know how many bobbins I could wind from a 3,000 yard spool. And on my machine here, this Janome 9450, I can get about 50 bobbins from one spool of 3,000 yards. You know, and that seems like a whole bunch, but I just wound up, I wound up 30 of them the other day, maybe 2 weeks ago, and I'm already halfway down. So I've already used at least 15 bobbins. So it does go away pretty quickly. So just, you know, be aware, try and be as economical as you can. By doing this, I can afford to get a good quality thread. I always like to use a nice the best quality I can afford. There are 2 schools of thought on thread. One is you use cotton thread on cotton fabric, and one is you use what you have. I'm kind of in the middle of that. I actually prefer a 40 weight polyester thread just because it's so very fine and it hides really well in my seams. I don't have bulky seams. It is not a cotton thread, so if you are a cotton aficionado, this wouldn't work for you. But that's what I do. I think that the polyester threads of this day and age are less damaging to the fabrics than the ones of our grandmother's age. Okay, on these, I'm going to just press towards the bottom piece so I'm not over pressing that point. So just down to that bottom piece. Get that one pressed out. Get that bottom piece here. Okay, those 3. And we'll get these 3. Green one going down. Okay, and you notice that I am just pressing this, I'm not pressing this open. You absolutely, you know, if you are worried about bulking your seams, absolutely press those open. And we did on the first few. Again, I'm, you know, I just am, I like to just get her done. Okay, so now we have these guys, and I'm going to put the green bottom one on top, just so that I make sure that I get the green bottom one on the same one on each one, because that would be bad to have it half green, half blue. Okay, there we go. Just set those aside for a moment, and I'm going to get out our stems. So the easiest way to know that you've got the stem on the right side is to start with the point up and the bottom piece up. And just add right here. Line up that first one. Come down a little bit, and then look how nicely that matches up right there. Now, again, this is a bias edge, so if you need to pull or push a little bit to get it to fit perfectly, you absolutely can do that. But because we trimmed these blocks carefully, and we are using an accurate 1/4 of an inch seam, they should come out exactly matching. So I'm going to put the stem on all 3 of these, and then I'll go back and add it to the other side. And then we will have done our stem blocks, and we are going to make 8 with the blue, and we are going to make 5 with the green on the bottom of them. So the 5 with the green will go across the bottom of our quilt because they're sitting in the grass, and then the 8 with the blue are the ones that stack up so that it looks like your flower is growing. So it works out really nicely that way, because this stem goes all the way through this bottom piece. So it will just attach to the one above it, and you will look like you have one long stalk on your sunflower, which is what sunflowers have, is long stalks. I have one growing at my house right now. It's about 3 foot tall already, and it's only the end of June. So I'm anxious to see how tall it's going to get. It's my first try at sunflowers in a lot of years. I did them years and years ago, but I haven't done them in a long time. Okay. Now, trim these guys apart. And on this, we are going to press these towards the stem. That's going to go away from these points, so we're not adding more bulk to those points. We're going to just press towards the stem like that. I'm going to wait until I get the other piece on here. Okay, so I need to find my one with the green because that's the first one I have. Okay, green one. Right there, green. I want to put this one. Again, see the points going up. I've got them upside down right now. I'm going from the ground up, and the green is on the bottom. There we go. I guess it really doesn't matter which way you go. It just made sense in my mind to start there. Match these up. Give it a little tug if you need to. Try not to stretch it too much because it is that biased edge. But the bias does make it easy to make things fit exactly. Okay, there's one. There's 2. And when I get these 3 done, I will have made all 13 of my stem blocks. So you can do this in just one really long chain and just make them all at one time. It goes pretty fast. Like I say, I just didn't think you wanted to watch me sew 13 different little, blocks. Okay, here we go. And the last one. So if you are sewing along at this point, stop your video and finish up all of these blocks, and then join me for the next part. I think we are going to make the bumblebee next. And the bumblebees are so fun. I've been anxious to do them because there's only 2 bumblebees. So I didn't work ahead on those. I figured we would figure them out together as we go along, because there's only 2 of them. So that's our next step. I'm going to press these out and then come back with you to do the bumblebee blocks. So pressing towards the green, like towards the stem, and I'll see you when you're done with all 13 of them. Before we go on, let's do a quick inventory. We have our 10 background squares. We have our 5 leaf blocks with green on the bottom. And we have our 8 leaf blocks with the blue on the bottom. So we now have 23 blocks done in a very short period of time. And there are only 30 blocks in this whole quilt. So we're over halfway there. Congratulations. Okay, next thing we're going to do is go on to our little bumblebee blocks. Okay, so we're going to start with our 5.5-inch squares. You have 2 of them that are blue and 1 yellow and 1 white. That's what we're going to need for this next step. So layer them right sides together. We're going to do these just like we did for the leaf blocks, where we're going to sew all the way around the outside edge and then cut them. Now, I just cut them with my ruler. You can, if you'd like, take the time to draw an X on your block at this point, like this, not to sew on, but after you sew, then if you don't want to use your rotary cutter, or if you just want a clear picture of where you're going to cut, you can cut right on those. So you can either use rotary cutter or your scissors. We are going to trim these down, so if the scissors, it'll be okay if it's a little ragged. I just like using my rotary cutter, and I just skip this step because, I like to sew, I don't like to draw. But it depends on, I have the sign in my room that says "My quilt, my rules." Well, it's your quilt, it's your rules, so you do it the way that you are most comfortable with. So if you're just a beginner, this is a great way to prep things so that you're sure you're getting everything exactly the way you want it to be. Okay? So we are going to sew all the way around again, all the way around these. Now, another advantage of that line is if you wanted to do the pivot and turn, you sew till your needle gets to that line and pivot. You don't have to worry about marks on your machine. Now, I overshot it just a little bit, but that's going to be okay because, like I say, we're going to trim these babies down a little bit. So we're starting with a 5.5-inch square. We will be trimming them down to 4 squares that all measure 3.5 inches. Okay, and then we'll go right into the other one. Again, just chain piecing. Now, these are the only 2 that you will need for the bee blocks because they are just 2 bee blocks, and I didn't do anything ahead of time. Right there. And I do typically stop on this 3rd corner and trim them apart right there just because I don't want it in my way as I turn. I need to go over to my other sewing machine and get my fabric cut clippers that I love so much. I was using the other machine and took them down there earlier. Okay, so we've got it. We are going to cut on that line. You can, like I say, either use scissors or your rotary cutter. I like the accuracy of the rotary cutter. Bink. And just turn your mat and go again. There we go. We have 4 blue yellows and 4 blue, white, which is what we need for our bumblebees. I just think they're about the cutest part of this quilt is those bees. Although I love the sunflowers too, but those bees, they make me smile. Okay, we're going to go back to these in a minute and press them all at one time when we do this next step, and then I'll press and trim at the same time. This next step is right here. We're going to make this little piece. We just made these for both bees. Oh, let me get up here where you see. We just made these. Now we're going to make these. Okay, so what we have are 4 white squares and 4 little blue squares. Okay, we're going to use them right side up. Yep, that's the right side up. And we are going to take the time on this to draw a line diagonally on the back of the blue squares. This is a stitch and flip method to make snowball corners. And this is going to just make it very easy for you to find the right place to sew. There are some tricks to do it. If you had to do a bunch of these, there are tricks to do it without doing the line. But because we only need 4, taking the time to do a line is great. In the live we had a couple weeks ago, I did it without, and I showed you how to draw a line on your machine. So if you're interested in that, go back and find the live for the Morning Mist mini marathon, and it will show you how to do that. Okay, now we're going to take these and we're going to put them right sides together with that diagonal going across one corner. They are squares. It doesn't matter which corner because they are all going to be identical, and we can just turn them. Sometimes when you're doing quarter square triangles and things, it makes a difference. In this case, it does not. So we're going to just put them there. Now, I have on my machine right now, I have my 1/4 inch foot with the flange guide. I don't like to sew on top of the fabric with that. I like to sew beside the fabric with that one. So I'm going to just change it to my 1/4 inch foot without, well, here, let me show you the difference. Without the guide. See, this one has a little guide. This one does not. So I'm not butting up against this piece of metal. So I can sew on top of the machine without it dragging down the fabric. The little guide will kind of drag the fabric and sometimes moves it a little bit. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to sew just to this side of the line so that when I press it over, I want it to come all the way out to the corner. And if I sew right on the line, it's not going to come quite all the way out. So I want to go 1 or 2 threads to the inside of this line. Okay? So we're going to go right in there, get just inside, start at the point and go just inside that line. There we go. Now, if you've used a wider marker than this, sometimes you can just use the edge of the marking because they're so fat. Okay, that one's I'm a little bit close. So remember that the second one is closer to on the line, and I'll show you the difference once we pull them out. Will it still work? Yes, it will. But it doesn't come quite up, and so you have a little bit of a narrower seam in that one corner if you don't give it the little bit of extra wiggle room. Okay, so this one I did well. I got it right where I wanted it. On that one and that one. This is the one that I did right on the line. So I'm going to show you the difference. Okay, keep that one aside. Where's my pressing mat? There it is. And we are going to press these towards the corner. Now, this is a friction pen that I use, so of course it goes away when I press. All right. See how when I press that, it goes all the way up and sits on that corner perfectly? Hopefully these are all going to do that, these guys right here. Okay, now watch what happens for the fourth one that I did not get it all the way up. I was on the line versus next to the line. And look what happens. It's still pretty good, but you see how it doesn't go quite up to the edge? It's sitting down just a little bit. I was still close enough. It's still going to work just fine. But with these, it takes it up to where you don't see any of that back fabric. Okay, but we're going to cut that back fabric away anyway. But by doing it next to the line, we know that that's still going to be nice and square. This one, we would have to be very careful to make sure that we still had a square corner, or if one side was a little lower than the other. But it's close enough that we are not going to have a problem. So there is our 4 snowball corners. We're getting our pieces all together. Let's see, is there any other pieces we have to make? I think this is all the pieces. So now we get to start building our bumblebee. Oh, no, we can't, because we have not yet pressed and trimmed these 2 guys here. So we're going to press these towards the blue. Well, let me think here just a second. On the white ones, I'm going to press half of the white ones toward the blue and half of the white ones towards the white, so that they are going to nest lovely here when we start sewing them together, because these 2 do come together at the point. So half each way, and doesn't matter on the yellow ones. And just press them all to the blue. Okay? And if the white ones were all pressed to the blue, we would still make it work. It's just going to nest that seam just a little bit easier by pressing half and half. Okay. Now we need to go back and we need to trim these to 3 1/2 inches. And I think they're going to be pretty darn close. If I remember right, I think they are pretty darn close. Now this time I'm going to pull up my smaller mat that is a spinning mat. So I use this one when I have a piece that is little and can fit in that whole section. I'm going to set those aside. Okay, here is our ruler. So we have 1, 2, 3, and here is the 3 1/2 is right here. Right in the middle of those numbers is 3 1/2. So I'm going to line up the 3 1/2 right there, and look how close to exact that is. So that one's not going to really need to be trimmed up any at all. I've got this coming straight. It looks pretty darn good. So all I have to do on this one is snip off my dog ears. Poor little puppy. Okay. And if I remember right, these all came out just pretty darn close to 3 1/2. 3 1/2. Yep, they did. So I think that we are going to be close enough that all we have to do on these is trim off. You'll want to double check yours, but I got my seam allowance set really, really well to where they are coming out exact. I'm just going to give it a little haircut here. And then we are going to make 2 bumblebees, because we have all the pieces. Oh, I probably should check the white ones, huh? Let's check the white ones. Now, if I turn this the other way, this is my half, so I just go right to the 3-inch line. And yep, they are still matching up really well. So we are good to go. And remember I said about bias seams? They're bias edges. These do have a little bit of bias edge here. So if we need to nudge just a smidge, we can. And it's still going to work just fine. Okay. All my little buggers out of there. So I was going to show you this cool little rotating mat. So when you are having to trim something up, you can line it up, get it on, and then just turn the mat to get your other sides. Isn't that cool? And so it makes it really easy, and your ruler doesn't move or anything. So it just makes it really easy to trim up. Okay, move that out of the way. Time to build a bee. All right, let's bring up our pattern here that shows us what we need to do. Here it is. So we're going to start in the corner with one of these little snowball corner blocks that we have, right? And then right below it is going to go a yellow block. And we do need to make sure that we get it turned the same direction, because otherwise our bee is going to be looking a little silly. Okay, and then our 3.5 inch black blocks. So these are going to go right up that center like that. Oop, I'm going to leave that one off so we can see our design. Okay, up here, a white one with the white down and the blue up. And another yellow one on the bottom. So we want these to look like a little butterfly here. We want these, the white touching the white. Same over here. We want the white touching the white. Okay, and does that look right? Our blues are pointing towards this black square here. Our whites touching white. Yellow touching black on both sides. Look at that. It looks right. Okay, so I'm going to move my paper. Get out of the way, paper. Okay, and I'm going to move them off a little bit farther to the side. And I'm going to stack the other one right on top so that I don't have to think this through again and risk making errors. So I have one bee flying in circles or something. I want them all to be exactly the same. So I'm just going to take the time to stack them up here, just like that, and our 3 blacks. Okay, so we have 3 rows of 3. I only want to deal with 2 rows at a time. I'm going to change back to my presser foot with the guide on it. And like I say, I only want to deal with 2 rows at a time. So I'm going to take this row, and I'm just going to take the whole row in my hand and move it to this side. So it's there out of my way for the next thing. And I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm going to move the left one, or the right one, sorry, left, right. The right one on top of the left one, pick them up, and sew them. I'm not going to cut my thread. I'm going to go to the second one, and I'm going to pick it up, flip it to the left, and sew it. I'm not going to do both sets of these at a time, because then I have to think about what order they go in again. This way I have them hooked together with a thread right there. Nothing can get twisted. This is called webbing them together. Take this one on top of this one and hook it together. Okay, now, depending on your experience and, how hard you want to think, this is a great time to put in an extra little cheater block if you want. But there's only 3, and I can count by 3s. So I'm going to just do the next row. I'm going to go back to the top and start again. And sew down this side. If you were doing a whole bunch of these, I might put a little cheater block in between and to separate out each of the blocks. But I think we're going to be just fine on this one. And that's the last one. Okay, so now we have 2 sets of bees almost done. So we have the first set is right there. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to snip it right here in the middle, because this is my second set that is identical, right? Okay, now we're going to just take this one and we're going to fold them out like this. And remember this stack I have over here? I'm going to take the top one and put here. I'm going to take the middle one and put it here. And the bottom one down here, keeping it right. Now, as I pull it forward to sew this one, this is going to fall off on my lap. So I'm going to just put a pin right in there to keep it where I want it. These two I can control. That third one, not as much. See how it's hanging off the machine here? And I'm going to just sew up this row. Now, I have not looked at my pattern yet to see which way to press seams because at this point, I'm not nesting anything. So I will look at that once I get all 9 blocks sewn into 3 rows. Okay, and there we go. There's one. Do the same thing on this one. Top one. And you can just do them as you go along too. You know, do the top one. Stop and get the second one. However works for you. And the last one. Now, once I get this last one on, I am going to take a time to look at my pattern and see what direction it wants me to press my seams. The pattern designers have thought this through. They have got it figured out to where it's going to be easiest for you. Okay. Now, remember I said press half of the whites one way and half of the whites the other? So this one is pressed to the blue, this one is pressed to the white. So when I nest these together, those are going to nest really nicely. They're going to fit together this way really nicely. Okay, here we go. Let's take this apart. I'm going to pull up my pressing mat, and then I'm going to analyze my pattern to see what I have to do. Okay, here we go. So it's saying this big black arrow is telling you what way to press. So on the top row, it wants you to press everything to the right. On the middle row, everything goes to the left and then back to the right. So that's when you put these together, that way they will nest nicely. So top row, nope, that's not the top row because the top row has whites in it like that. Okay, top row goes to the right. So I'm going to lay it out like that and like that and just give that a quick press to the right. This little iron is just the same size as the width of my strip, so I can just get it in one press. Okay. Now these guys are going to go to the left. So with my thumb, I just get under there and pull that seam to the left. Making sure I don't flip this one because otherwise I'm going to repress it. I don't want to do that. Press to the left. And the last one goes back to the right. So kind of work it with your finger to get it pressed the right direction to the right. Okay, let's turn it over and look at that now. These seams are all going one way. These are going the opposite and the opposite. Now, we're ready to sew these together. However, I am going to press my other block before I forget my directions and have to look again because I get a little bit forgetful. So the first ones are going to the right. There we go. And you see how I'm giving this a little tug to make sure it's pulled out nice and smooth. Giving me a nice smooth press. Now these are going to the left. Tuck that seam under, under, and to the right again. And there we go. Okay, we are ready to finalize our bees. Okay, top row comes down onto the bottom row. And we can see how those just nest really nicely together because it still has that thread holding it together, it pulls that seam right in on top of itself to where you don't have any gaps. So we're going to give this a little working room here. I see I've got my finger on this seam, keeping it where I want it to be as I'm coming up to it. Now, this top one is coming towards me, which means the bottom one is going up. And this little bump on my machine will often catch that seam. So I always stop and make sure it's still going north where it's supposed to be and hasn't gotten flipped down. And this one too. So I want to nest those in right nice and tight to each other. Because it's a bias, I've got a little fullness here, so I'm kind of just heading it out, getting it pushed under so it feeds in evenly. There we go. And the last one right there. And you notice I don't tend to reverse stitch at the beginning of these. If it's going to be sewn into another block, it doesn't need to be reverse stitched. The only time I worry about that is if this were the actual outside edge of my quilt, then I would come through and I would tack these down. But it's not. I'm going to have a border on this quilt, so it's not going to matter. Okay. Nope, I just dropped my seam ripper. Don't you hate it when that happens? Okay, here we go. Now, we're not quite lined up here, so I'm going to stop and adjust here. There we go. I can still feel with my finger that they are nested nicely. This time my seam is going up, so I'm not having to check the bottom. I'm just feeling with my finger the status of my nest. And they are sitting nice and smoothly together. And all the way down. Now I want to check real quick to see if it tells me. It does not tell me which way. Oh, it wants you to press the seams open, okay, at this point. So that would be your next step, is to press these lengthy seams open. And in order to do that, because we have it webbed, you're going to have to come in and snip that little thread that holds it together right there. Simple to do, but you won't be able to get your seams open if that is not snipped. Okay, that one, there it goes, it's nested. Still up. And one more seam and we have our second bee done. Because we did both sides of this one. Pink. And we will do this one. Okay, that one, there we go. I have to stretch that one just a smidge to get it to nest. But it's working out. And this one needs to get fed under just a little bit. There we go. Let's look at our bumblebees. Oh my goodness, how cute is that? Look at his little wings, his little bee body. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to get those pressed. Now see how we nested those seams and how nicely those come together? This one's just a little bit off, but I think it's close enough. Well, you know what? Let me show you how to fix that if it's not quite where you want it. You're going to take your seam ripper and you're going to start maybe an inch away from that seam, the intersection. And I'm just cutting about every fourth stitch. You pop it right there at the seam. Makes it easier. About every 4th stitch. Like that. Get under there. Okay. And then go to the other side and just grab that where you just cut it. Grab that bottom thread and give it a little tug, and it just comes loose. Okay. Now I have it still hooked together with the, oh, I got something still hooked together there. Oh, I have a stitch that didn't come out. But I still have this little webbed stitch up here at top that I'm going to cut off so that I'll be able to open it all the way up like this after I get this one stitch that I missed. There we go. Okay, so now we have it open. We know that this one is right and we know this is right, so I only need to get it just a little bit, and now I can readjust that seam, get it nested a little bit better. If you have the glue pen, do I have my glue pen here? Again, I had it down at my other machine sewing earlier, but you would just fold this back, put a little dab of glue right there so it would hold those together, and then resew. Now, see how this one is got the extra fullness here, and this one is pretty straight? I want to put the part with this extra fullness down to my feed dogs so that they will help inch that fullness in, get it eased in there where it doesn't take a pleat. Feel that you get them nice and nested. If you've glued it, they stay nested. And we're going to just now resew that seam, and that fullness is going to get tucked in. Okay, here we go. Let's see if I did it. So it's this seam right here. Ready? Look at that. So much better. And that's all the time it takes to fix one of those little things. You don't have to take out the entire row. Just take out that little bit, line it up, and go again. And this one looks real good. Okay, so there's our bees. Going to give them a press. They want these seams pressed open. So that's what we'll do. You'll need to take your seam ripper and just run it through this seam right there, and it'll just catch that little webbed thread right there, and so you can open it up. So just put it within the seam. Oh, that's the one I just undid to fix. Okay, and there's one right there, and one right there. And now I'm able to open those out and give them a little press. Okay, so we'll get our bees done. Then the next thing we're going to be doing is our sunflowers. So we need to make 5 sunflower blocks. So get your bees done, and then I'll meet you back here to do some sunflowers. Alrighty, we have our bee blocks, but we almost forgot one thing. Before we can go on to our flower blocks, we have to put the borders on our bee blocks, because right now they measure 9.5 inches. The rest of the blocks in our quilt are 12.5 inches. So we need to put our 9.5 inch strips on each side of the blocks, and then we will put a 12.5, our blue 12.5 strip on the top and the bottom, and that will bring our block up to the 12.5 inch that the rest of our blocks are. So just, very nice and evenly, just put it down on the 2 sides. The reason I say sides first is because it will look better if both of your blocks have their short pieces on the sides and their long pieces on the top, versus one of them having short on the top and bottom and one having the long on the sides. It doesn't technically matter which way it goes. I just like the way a block looks when the short sides are on the side, and then the top and bottom are the nice long ones that just kind of tie it all together. But again, your quilt, your rules. So if you go the other direction, that is just fine, as long as they come up to be 12.5 inches. All right, there's one. And the last one here. I still just think these little bee blocks are so stinking cute. I think I could make a whole quilt with just, a whole bunch of bee blocks on it. That's the fun part of these kits, is even though they come pre-cut, you do get the whole pattern and the cutting instructions. So if you want to make them again or a variant of them, all you have to do is cut your own pieces out of your stash and go. So it's a twofer. All right, got that done. I am going to press these out. Just because that's the path of least resistance, is to press them out. Let's get this one. Just like that. And then we'll just put on our tops and bottoms. Okay, so easy peasy. One final step to get our bees buzzing the right way. There we go. Set that seam and press it out. Right now, if our seam allowance is exactly at 1/4 inch, these babies are going to just lay right on there and give us right at 12.5 inches. And look at that, they do. So there it is. So you'll just sew those to the top and the bottom, and then we will go on to our sunflower blocks. Okay, bee blocks are done, but I want to show you one thing. Do you remember when we were making our half square triangles, and I told you that these were going to be biased edges, and you had to be very careful of your biased edges. I wasn't really careful on one of these sides, so I want to show you what happened. So you see how this side just lays nice and flat, as does that one, and that one. They are just nice and flat. This one right here has a little bit of a puckery area right in here, and it has this bow. That is because when I was sewing this one on, I stretched that bias just a little bit. And it doesn't look like a problem when you're sewing because that looks nice, but once you let go, it gives that little bit of a bow. Now, I'm not going to take this out because it is not stretched so far that it's going to cause a problem in the long run, but just be aware that that can happen when you're dealing with half square triangles with the bias on the outside edges. Once I put the batting under this and quilt it down, look what happens when I get the batting on, or when I get it down flat. It's going to go away and be just fine. Just know that you have to be super careful with those bias edges. But I'm going to accept this block for what it is, and I will be happy with it just like that. Okay, so now we are on to the last 5 blocks of the quilt. We are going to make our sunflower blocks. So we're going to start with our 6.5 inch squares again, the light blue and the yellow. Then we're also going to be doing the light blue and the gold. Okay, so yellow and gold. So you're going to take your squares and you're going to just make those half square triangles again. Like I said before, you can draw your lines if you prefer. Let me find my ruler. Oh, just dropped my ruler on the floor. I am clumsy today. Okay. So you can draw your cutting lines before you start, if you'd like. I'm using my friction pen again. Oh, I closed it. Okay, leave the pen open when you want to draw. And just draw your lines both directions, or just cut it on the diagonal later, whichever way you are most comfortable with. I'm going to do one of each. Okay. So half square triangles 4 at a time. Again, these will have that bias edge, so we will be careful when we're sewing them in. And we are just going to sew all the way around. You will be making 3 like this and 3 like this. 3 yellows and 3 golds. I've already made some because I have some blocks prepped ahead of time. So I just kept one of each to do together. Again, this is just very simple sewing, just straight lines. There's nothing very tricky about this quilt. Just straight line sewing, no curves involved, even though we have flowers that will come out looking a little bit curved. We are not doing any curve sewing, no tricky piecing or anything. We have a couple that have a few extra steps. Like in this one, we're going to make a partial, what am I trying to say? A partial quarter square triangle, a semi quarter square triangle. So we will have one side of it be a full triangle and one of them will be half triangle. So it'll be fun. Oh, see, I went a little far, so I'm going to just cut and come back onto the end. Just like that. No harm, no foul. I'm going to stop here and undo this one so it doesn't get in my way as I come around. Yeah, so quarter square triangles are a lot of fun, and this is just a semi-quarter. It's a halfway quarter, and that's what we're going to use some of these for, is to make some very cool little partial quarter square triangles. Okay, so we have both of our squares done after I get right there. Okay, so this time, the last time we made these with the blue and the yellow for the bees, we cut them down to 3.5 inches. This time we are cutting them to 4 inches. So don't get ahead of yourself with the other ones and cut too many at the 3.5, because then you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Got to tell you, I did that. I got all excited and I saw that I was doing the same color things and I cut them wrong. I cut them all down to 3.5. So I had to figure out how to fix that. And, you know, I said earlier that the pieces, some of them had extra pieces. I was able to fix my error with those extra pieces. I did not have to call anybody to say, send me more pieces or anything like that, because I had enough extra pieces to fix it. Now, I might not have if I had to cut these too, but I didn't. So I had enough to correct my error. So that's one of the really cool things about the Fabric Hut kits, is there is enough in case you make a small error, or in my case, a pretty extreme error, but it all worked out. So there we go. Okay, now we have these. We are going to trim them down to 4 inches. Okay. First, I need to press them open. Can't trim until I press. And I'm going to press them all towards the yellow and the gold, according to the pattern. I'm going to press them towards yellow and gold. Okay. So just like that. I'll get my dog ears when we trim. So because I want to go to yellow and gold, I'm going to put the yellow up, or the gold up. And this is a straight of grain still, so I'm not worried about stretching it that way. Set my seam and get them pressed. There we go. Okay, so I got my gold ones. Let's get my yellow ones. And then we'll go back to trimming. And I think that you guys have watched me trim enough, but I'm going to show you one more time just to make sure. I'll just trim a couple of them, and then you can go about trimming yours, and we'll come back for the next step. So here we are. We are all pressed open. And I am going to use my round rotating cutting mat because these are smaller blocks. I have a 4-inch ruler here, or I could use the 6-inch. However, again, I'm using yellow fabric, and those yellow lines are just really hard to see. Love my fabric cut ruler, except for on yellow fabric. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to use this one. I'm going to find my 4-inch, and guess what? This is an exact 1, 2, 3, 4.5-inch ruler. Is it a 4.5? Let's measure it and find out. Yes, it's a 4.5. So I know that this orange strip around here is the 1/2 inch that I'm going to cut off. So I'm going to line it up, getting my seam straight on that diagonal edge. Line up. If I can get them to be straight, I can line up these 2 sides and just cut 2 sides. So we'll go up that one and just rotate my mat and get that one. Now, if I've had it lined up nicely, my point is going to come right to that point, right to this point, and trim off that other dog ear. So get all 8 of yours trimmed up, and then let's come back and I'll show you the next step. Okay, on this next step, we're going to be using those 1/2 square triangle blocks, but in order to use them, we first need to take our 10 of the 4-inch gold and the 4-inch yellow blocks and just draw a line diagonally down the back of each of them. You will need 10 of each. Because like I've said before, I've done a few ahead of time. I only have 4 of each here, but you will need to do all 10. When you made your 1/2 square triangles, you made 3 sets of 4, which means you had 12 of them. You only need 10 of those. So you're going to set 2 of those aside and save them for something else later on. You are only going to need the 10 that go with these blocks. So I'm drawing my line on the back. Now, as always, if you are going to do this sewing on the back this way, if you are very confident with your sewing, we are going to be sewing 1/4 inch on each side of this line. If you are very confident with your ability to keep a nice 1/4 inch, just draw one line. However, if you are not as confident and you want a little bit of help, draw 2 more lines, one on each side of your main line. And I'm doing them just a smidge small, so it gives me a little wiggle room. And then I can sew on these 2 and cut on that one. So it depends on your comfort zone. If you are really comfortable just sewing 1/4 inch on each side of that line, just draw one. It is more important that you do things the way that are comfortable for you than the way that I tell you to. You will find your comfort zone through these different projects, and that's what's important, is that you get so comfortable with your sewing that it becomes, I have a friend who gets after me because I always say, oh, it's so easy. And she says, it's so easy for you. It just takes some practice. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been quilting for 40 plus years. She's been quilting for 18 months. So yes, it's easier for me, but you just find the way that works for you, and you will get to where you can whip through them too over time. Okay, now this step right here is very important, that you line these up properly. So this is our 1/2 square triangle, and both colors are going to be the same. Okay, so we're going to put the yellow on the top left corner. We're going to put the blue on the bottom right corner, And then we are going to lay our square with our diagonal across it. We do not want our diagonal going the same way as this diagonal. We want it to be perpendicular to it. So put it to where it's going across it. Now watch what happens after we sew. Look at what we end up with. A split quarter square triangle. If it were a true quarter square triangle, we would have it split here too, and you would have blue here and yellow here. But this is a split quarter triangle. So that's what we're going to do. So yellow to the bottom right, or I'm sorry, blue to the bottom right, and yellow going perpendicular to that line, not parallel with it. And we're going to sew on both sides of that line. Right there. And I like to just lay them all out at the same time so that I don't get anything turned the wrong direction. Right there. And because the orange one or the gold ones are the same, as you can see when we flip this page, well, it says to do them both. It says yellow ones. You're going to do the same things for the gold ones. Right here it has the blue down and the gold up. So do the very same thing with both sets of them. So let's set these up the same way. Blue down, gold up, perpendicular. I'm hoping I'm using the right term. Yeah, perpendicular, not parallel. Okay. You know, math was a long time ago for me and those math terms, but I try and pull them out every now and then just to make myself sound smarter. I guess it doesn't work if I'm not confident, right? So, just like that. And now I can just chain piece through all of them and get them done quickly. Now you will have, I have 8 here. You will have more than that. You will have 8 of each, or 12 of each. So just know that, or well, you'll have 10 of each because we're not doing one. So just know that I have a smaller number because I have done some ahead of time. I'm changing to my 1/4 inch foot without the guide so that I'm not buckling my fabric as it runs along it. Then I'm going to just run the side of my foot right along that line, just like that. And I believe that we will be trimming these up a smidge too. So we're going to be, I think we have just a little bit of wiggle room, but you still want to be as accurate as you can. There we go. Now I am feeling with my fingers, remember that seam right here? The seam on the back? I'm feeling with my fingers that it doesn't get flipped the wrong way as I bring it up to the machine, because this little lump here can sometimes catch them and flip them. I'm just being careful that it doesn't. I'm just feeling it as I go because I don't want that to get flipped the wrong direction. It'll make a little unnecessary lump in my final project. I don't want that. Okay, now I didn't get quite in the corner, so I'm going to adjust it and get that corner right on. And then follow it down to the right place. There we go. So even if you don't get it right, you can adjust on the fly because this corner is in the right place. All righty. Halfway there on this side. So I'm always interested in hearing from you as to what you may need more explanation on, what you're enjoying most about some of these kits. If there's a particular technique that you're really struggling with, you can always just contact us and I'll get in hold of you and help you walk it through. Because we want you to be super duper successful. So the website is printed on your pattern, so you can always check there and you'll get a response either from myself or from Mark. And typically Mark sees them first and then I come back in. He sends me the ones I need to deal with. So ask questions if you need. It's all good. There are no such things as stupid questions. I love being questions on things and finding out how I can explain something just a little bit better, a little bit easier for you. I'm relatively new to doing videos, so sometimes I forget to slow down, or it's different than explaining something live. I've always done live classes, and you get the interaction right there. So if you're getting stuck on something, don't be afraid to reach out. Okay. Here we go. And a lot of these techniques, like this half square technique or the quarter square triangle technique, on our YouTube or on our Facebook, we do have a whole list of the different techniques that I have handled individually, and we've done that time, so you're not getting overwhelmed with a lot of things at once. You know, I know that I've done a video on how to do quarter square triangles, and that's all I talk about during that time. They're not terribly long, so you can just reference those. There's a whole bunch of different things that I've covered. So, and if you still need some help, like I say, contact me. If my teaching style isn't quite what resonates with you, you can always look something up online. There's so many good videos online. But hopefully, if you're having a hard time with my teaching style, I would really like to know what I could do differently and what I can do better, because I am just really wanting these to be helpful for you. And I don't get my feelings hurt. So you just be honest with me. Okay, we are on the last one. There we go. And we'll cut them. Now I will go through and I want to show you what's going to happen when we cut this. I'm going to just cut this one with the scissors real quick so you can see it, because something phenomenal is happening here with these split quarter square triangles. When you open them out, each one is opposite. They are not going to be exactly the same. So you need to be sure to look at them before you sew them into something. See how this has the quarter square gold on the bottom and the blue on the top, the bottom right. This one has it on the bottom left. So they are mirror images of each other. So, and that is going to come in play within our sunflower blocks. So when you cut them and press them, I try and keep them in their opposite stacks so that I know which one I'm dealing with, and it's easier for me to pick out the one I need. Okay? So, and with these, I think I want to double check your instructions here real quick. She doesn't necessarily tell which way you want to press them. I like to press to the side of least resistance. If we were pressing this way, we'd have a lot more seams right here. So I'm going to press this way. I'm going to press towards the half square triangle versus the quarter. Okay? So get everybody trimmed up. Get all 20 of them, because you're going to end up with 20, 10 of each color frame in each, what do I want to say? Each, I don't know what I'm trying to say. But so you're going to have 20. Half of them are going to look this way and half of them are going to look that way. Okay? So get them all cut up and pressed. And then we only have one more little thing we have to do before we start putting our sunflower blocks together. Okay. We need to trim these guys up to 3.5 inches. Okay? So how are we going to do that and still keep our lines in the right places? This is the part that gets just a smidge tricky. but you can do this. Okay, so on my ruler, this is my 1/2 inch, and this is my 3 inch here. So I know that that's going to be 3.5. If I put it right there and right there. Okay, see that's 3.5. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look to see if this line goes all the way across. Now I want to turn this the other way, so I have that 45-degree diagonal line going straight across all the way up that seam. Okay, and I'm pretty close to the 3.5 inches here, but look, I'm not over here, so it's not quite square. What I need to do is get this point where these two colors come together to come right at the 3.5 inch line. Okay, and still keep this line diagonal. And if I can do that, then I will have a perfect corner. So let's see how I can do that. Well, I can get this straight, and then I move this. Do you see right here is the 3.5 inch line? So I can move it to where it intersects this corner. Is that making this side straight? No, it's not. But it is making this one straight all the way around. So I'm going to have it lined up right with that join there in the corner, and I'm going to trim off that side and this side. Okay, so now I know I have these two sides lined up with my 3.5. And now I can simply put my ruler on the 3 right there. And I'm still noticing that this is nice and straight up the diagonal. And everybody's on the 3 inch, coming right to there, going right to that point again. I'm double checking that point. Maybe inch it up just a smidge. My diagonal is still right. And see, we're trimming just the littlest part, but that to get this to lay right, we want to make sure that those are exactly 3.5 inches. And there we go. So let's do it again with this one. I want my long diagonal to go with the diagonal on my ruler. Oh, I'm going to turn it around so I have it and I can see where my 3.5 is here on this corner. And I'm going to get that right on that seam. I'm going to, now I've pulled it down this way, so this line's not lined up, so get that line lined up again, and then get it right on that seam, and take off two sides, that side, and then turn it. Oop, I moved it, so now I have to realign. Get it back where it was. Remember, this side is not necessarily exact yet. Well, no, that is the one we just did, isn't it? Okay, so it is, there we go. There we go. We're going to get it right back. This is the side we just did, so it's right. So I'm on the corner there. I'm getting that right at the point of my diagonal. Everybody's happy, and I'm going to cut off that one. Now I have this side and this side square. I can turn it around, find my 3.5 inch line, make sure I'm up the square, right to the points, and I have those two. Did that help? We can do it again. We'll do it one more time. Actually, I'm going to change to a lighter color so maybe you can see it a little bit better. There's that one. Let's go with one of the yellow ones instead of the gold one. Okay, here we go. Diagonal line. I like the half or the quarter line on this side so that I can see it best. So we're going to get that diagonal line right up the middle. I'm making sure I'm within the 3, and I want that to touch that seam right there. And it's still, well, not quite straight, so I need to adjust it a little bit, still touching that seam. And, well, let's turn it. Don't try and force it in there. And there we go. I've got these two corners done. Turn it around, lay it out here at 3.5 right there. Ooh, diagonal up the line. One. And you know you've cut that line when your dog ears are gone. You know you've gotten it all. Because sometimes it's like, well, did I do this one yet? I don't know if I did this one yet. Because some of them, look how close this is to right without me trimming it. So sometimes it's hard to tell. But there we go. Okay, so trim up all 20 of your blocks. And then we have one last little thing. Okay, aren't they just cute? Look at those. They are all ready now for us to put into our sunflowers. I have them divided by which direction the quarter square is in. So they'll be ready for me in the next step. But we have one more step to take before we can finally put our sunflower together. So we need to make these blocks. And we need to make 10 of each. Okay, so these are super easy to make. We have done the stitch and flip method before. We've even done it in this quilt. So going to take your smaller pieces and you are going to draw a line diagonally across the back like that on all of them. You will be making 10 of each. I'm making just a couple of each right now because I have some of them done already. This is another one of those that you're going to have a little bit of extra fabrics here, but that's all right. So you need 10 of each total, and that is exactly how many of the little squares you have. Okay, so little squares go onto the right side of the 3.5-inch squares. And it doesn't matter which corner you put it on because they're all identical. I kind of looked at mine and thought, you know, which part of this design do I want to cut off? This one is the plainest, so I'll cut that one off. That's kind of how I decided which corner to put them on, but it just really doesn't matter. I can just plop them on any corner just like that and sew them up. Okay, now this is the time where we have to be very careful when we are sewing, that we are sewing just to the right-hand side of our line so that we have the room to press our inner triangle over to the outside and make sure that it comes all the way to the edge. So just a little bit, you know, 1 or 2 threads is all it takes to the right-hand side of that line. I don't know if you can see that. Let me really quickly here change feet to an open toe foot, so maybe you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. I love how easily my machine feet change. Okay, there we go. Alrighty, and so just a little bit to now I do have my needle offset for a 1/4-inch seam when I'm using my 1/4-inch foot, so disregard that it's not in the center of the foot. But see how I'm just a little bit to the right-hand side of that seam or that drawn line so that it will give me enough extra fabric to make the fold over that I need to go over this thread. Now, if you have a very thick thread, you may need 2 or 3 threads worth instead of just one thread worth to the right, because the bigger your thread, the farther it has to fold over. But I'm using a 40 weight, so it's not too far. Let's clip these babies together. And then we're going to just press them open and see how nicely it goes right up to the edge of what I just sewed. And I'm going to just come back through and trim off this back at about 1/4 of an inch or so. They're not going to show. And these I do with my scissors versus the rotary cutters that I sometimes do with the longer ones, because I can just do these very, very quickly. It takes longer to line them up and get the ruler on them than to just clip them with my shears. Okay, now I'm going to press them all towards the little corner. Okay, pull this up here. So I'm going to put the little corner on top and press it out. Set my seam and press it out. These are really small seams, so I'm not being as careful to press it without stretching it, because it's just such a short seam that it's not going to do much damage. Okay, there we go. So you will need 10 of each color. I have 4 of each color because I'm just making, whoop, wrong way. Just making 1 block. Okay, are you ready? Shall we put them together? Let's get all of our pieces. First, he's going to tell you to go through and check that you have all your pieces. So you need 20 of your little blue squares. Got them. You need 20 of the light yellow blocks with the yellow on this side. Now, this is 20, meaning 10 of the light and 10 of the dark. Okay? So I've got those. And is that the right? Nope, that's the wrong one. That's this one. So let's switch them up. Then I have with it the seam there. Okay, got those, got those. Then I need yellow ones and I need gold ones. So I have my 5 stacks with the 5 things and we're good to go. All right, this is the fun part. Move these all off to the side so we can start building. And following your pattern, you are going to start with, I'm going to set these aside. You are going to start with your center block here. And I like to just make the snowball in the center. Okay? This is probably not going to be a big enough mat, but when you're doing it and you're going to be watching this pattern carefully. So here I have the dark with the gold here and here. And then I have with the yellow here and here. Okay? That makes sense? So golds and darks. And that kind of sets me up to build the rest of it. Okay, so now I am dealing with gold right here. And I want the gold that has the blue on top and the gold off to the side. So that would be this one. Blue on top and 1/4 gold right there. And that's going to go directly above this little one. Then I need, over here on this side, I need the blue with the 1/4 on the other side. So blue with the 1/4 on the other side that goes right there. See how that works? So we have a long diagonal cutting straight across here and our 2 golds in the middle. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing on this side. So we have the long diagonal going across right there and the golds on the inside. So it makes a star point. Okay, and then we're going to put our yellow ones off here. So let's move to this yellow one. I need a gold one or a yellow one here with the, right here, the yellow on the inside. And then the other yellow one on this side with my diagonal going across. Got it? Okay, so now it was at this point that when I made the other ones, that I discovered that all of these seams are going the same direction. And that's okay. It's going to make it a little trickier to match them up, but it's okay. However, if we were to go through and change a couple of them, then they would match up. So, because right here, when we match these two up, look what happens. We have both of those seams in the same corner. So if I were to press my yellow ones to the blue, then it would nest better. So and you may have pressed your seams open. If you pressed your seams open, you won't have this little thought. So anyway, we're going to continue setting up. We have another right up here. We have a yellow one with the gold on the inside. So it's going to go there with the gold over here, right there, which means we need the opposite one to go right there. I have that long seam, okay? And then I just have one more here on the bottom. That's going to be let's see, where am I? Right here. A gold one with the half square. Okay, this one's going to go here, and this one's going to go there. So I have my blues. All of my blues need to be pointing to the outside, right? Okay. And then we just put in our little blue box on the corner, right? Okay, so I have enough of these here to make 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the time to stack my second one on top while I have a pattern already laid out so that I can, that one's wrong, so that I don't have to rethink it next time. I want to be able to just have it ready for me. I'm going to sew them both at the same time. Get that one in there. Put in my yellow ones. This one goes here. This one goes up here. See how they're going opposite from each other? So it just takes a moment to think it through and make sure all of your angles are going the proper directions according to your picture. Then I have these little guys, and you notice that they match the colors on either side of them. So like that. And like that. It's like making a puzzle. And then I have 4 more of these that I will put on my outside corners. And now I'm ready to start sewing. Okay. A block like this is super easy to get things twisted around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to web this together. I'm going to start by sewing these first 2 rows. I'm going to take the top one, flip it onto the second one, and sew it down the right side. I'm going to take the second one, flip it onto that one, and sew it down the side. I'm just lining these up down here in front of my machine so I can set my block off to the side. I use my little mini ironing mat to build on. I also have some little mini design boards that I will sometimes use, and I probably should have got one of those out because it's a little bit bigger. So let's just move this off to the side so I can sew up this first row right here. Oh, got to get the right foot back on. Now I'm sewing next to the fabric instead of on it. So I'm going to put on the one with the guide. And I'm going to just sew down this side. Just like that. Oh, I caught a thread, so let's pull that out so it gets out where it's supposed to be. Got a thread around my foot. It's sewing fine, it just wrapped around my foot. There we go. Okay, get the second one. I'm going to do all 4 of these first 2 rows, and then I'm going to do all 4 of the same rows for the second block. I'm going to build both blocks simultaneously. You can build all 5 of yours at one time if you'd like, just by stacking them and taking the first 2, then the next 2, and the next 2. Okay, so now I'm going to reach up here and flip the same direction on this second round. That's the first block. There we go. The second one, and I'm just making sure I don't turn anything as I bring it over to the machine. And the third one. Excuse me. This is a great day for making sunflower quilts. It's about a 95 outside here in Oregon today. This is only the second day this year I've turned on my AC. So it's about 79 in the house. So it's a very comfortable day, beautiful to look outside, but I don't want to be out there. I call it a perfect quilting day. Okay, so I have those first 2 done. Now I'm going to cut these open. Cut it off from my machine there, and I'm just going to pull it forward. I'm not going to cut them apart. I'm going to simply open it up and grab the next one from the top and add it to the right-hand side. And sew it down. Just like that. And open the next one. And add the next one. And I will do this all the way down for both blocks. Or you could do it for all 5 blocks. And you notice now I have them hooked together in both spots. So nothing can get twisted. Nothing can get put out of place. I don't have to worry that I get anything misaligned because they are locked together. And this is the 4th one. So this is the bottom of that first block. Now, if I really wanted to, and you may want to because you're doing more than just 2, you can cut them apart and do each block after, do the first 4, cut them apart, do the next 4, cut them apart. With just 2 blocks, there's not so many pieces that they get tangled up or anything. And you see, even regardless about which way it lays down, you know which block you have to sew to. Okay, and okay, that one got flipped a little bit. There we go, I flipped it right. Did I flip it right? Let me see. No, I did not. Does it go that way? Now I have to get out my paper and look. See, I was talking and I bumped one. Now I have to see. We are looking at this block. Okay, wait a minute. Where am I? Oh, nope, this is the top block. No, it's not. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, it is. I took the bottom one instead of moving up here to the top, like I should have. There we go. That's the one I want. That's the one I want. Got to pay attention to what you're doing. Go figure. Okay. Line them up because this is the first one of the second block. And I grabbed the 4th one of the first block instead of the first one of the second block. But you could tell really right away because it wasn't lining up properly that I didn't have the right one. Okay. 3. And 4. See how easy that is? It just is keeping them completely lined up. Now this, I'm having to make sure that I have those points matched nicely or I won't have a good point on my block. That's a good time. You can use a little dollop of glue if you need. Okay, cut them apart. Now look what we've got. We have got, whoop, don't want to drop that off of there. We have got the first 3 of all of these done, right? So we're going to just come up to the top again and start adding this final block right here to the top. And then we look how they're hooked together here and here. They will be hooked together one more spot. And so you absolutely cannot get anything twisted when you go to sew your rows together. There's that one. Open it out, put the next one on, keeping it the same direction. That's the tricky part, is make sure you grab it from the same side every time so you don't twist anything. So when I grab them, I tend to grab them with my thumb on the outside edge so that I can pinch them right here and just flip them over. If I grab them from the top, then I want to flip them and I have to figure out which way I'm flipping them. So I grab it from that side so it just lays right on top. And of course this one doesn't matter. It's all blue. But on the ones that are directional, find the way that you grab them so that it makes sense how you're twisting them. And do it the same every time. Another blue one. From the top of the stack again. We are on the last 3 now of the second block. Right there. Right here. Now, did I get that flipped? Okay, see, now I just did it to myself again. I did. I picked it up wrong, didn't I? So I want to pick it up this way. After I just said, be careful not to pick it up wrong, I did it. And the final one. Okay, let me set that out of the way. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the end of one block. So I'm going to come through and I'm going to snip all 3 little threads here. So I have 2 separate blocks. Let's set one aside so we can look at this one. Now, it would take a miracle for me to have twisted something when I'm sewing them together now. There's just no way I can twist because everything is just hooked together so tightly that I can't twist. But we do have to think about how we're going to press this. Okay, so the easiest way to press when you have webbed this way is to press one row to the right, the next row to the left, to the right, to the left. And that way, these seams are going to nest together perfectly. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to sew or press the top row to the right, the second row to the left. Now I picked right and left. I picked what the pattern says, but does it matter if you start with left and go left, right, left? No, it doesn't. Just so long as every other one goes the opposite direction. So those are all going towards the right. These are all going to go towards the left. I love this little iron because it's just the right size to go through a 3.5 inch block without affecting the other ones. Okay, so this one now we're going to go to the right. Make sure that you've got it flipped correctly in the back. And I will turn this over and look at the back when we're done. Make sure everything is going the way it's supposed to. And to the left. Okay, so now let's just flip it over and see what we've got. And at this point, you may have to repress something. See right here how this isn't pressed down nice and tight? So I'll just simply take the iron, add just a little more heat to that one. These are all going right, left, right, and left. Let's get that one down just a little bit more. Sometimes when you have these kinds of seams here, when you press one way, you're going to flip this up or something. So that's why I always turn it to the back and make sure I haven't disrupted any other pressing that I have done along the way. Make sure everything is still laying down nice and neat. Oh, look there, I got a little funky corner going on, so we'll just clean that up. Okay, and now we are ready to sew our block. And it doesn't matter if you start at the top or the bottom, but flip one up. You have those seams that are still hooked together, so it helps them nest really nicely because you have that little thread right there on it. Just line them up and stitch them down. Just like that. And I'm checking to make sure, I'm feeling with my finger that it's nesting. I'm checking to make sure this is up. You can feel it if it gets flipped the wrong way. So just be mindful of that. It's going to make your quilt lay much smoother if everything is going the right way. Okay, and there we go. So we've got the first one down. Doesn't matter what you choose to do next. You can flip this one over and do this one next and then come back to the middle, or you can just simply flip over one more time and keep going. Again, checking your nesting. I can feel that there's a little bit of a gap right in here, so that means they're not quite nested together. So I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to kind of give it a little nudge with my scissors underneath, or a stiletto, or whatever I have handy right here. Make sure they're hooked together nicely. Get this one. Oh, I've got another thread pulled up there. Don't know why I'm catching my threads in my presser foot this time, but I am. Okay, no harm, no foul. And go right through that one. Feeling, just being careful. That's just my motto. Just be careful. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we do want to get it as close as we can. You know, if your seam is not exactly 1/4 of an inch, you know, you want to strive for 1/4, but perfection is not necessarily a requirement. Okay, let's see how I'm doing matching my seams up. They're coming together pretty good, right there and there. Having them nested with that extra thread holding them together, the webbing keeps them nice and tight. Look at there, that's coming together pretty close at the ends. So one more seam and this block is done. Stop and adjust. You are welcome to, before you even start sewing this seam, match everything up and put clips or pins or however it is that makes you comfortable to sew. You go ahead and do that if that's how you are the most comfortable. For myself, when they're just little 3-inch blocks like this or 3.5-inch blocks, I feel like I can adjust them as I go. If it were if I were doing a sashing or something, I would definitely do some pinning and some clamping, make sure they're in the right places. So there we go, look at that. Now on this one, I will probably just press all of those seams one way. Or you could press them open if you are a press them open kind of gal or guy. Do that, and you just need to go through and clip the little thread that webbed them together. You are not going to be able to press your seams open with that little thread there. You're not going to be able to spin a seam if you like to spin your seams until you release that little thread. Now, if you're just going to press to one side, do you need to take the time to do it? No. No, you don't. It's not going to hurt anything for it to stay there, but if you want to press them out or spin those seams, you are definitely going to need to clip that little thread right there, and that's how long it takes. Okay, so now I could open them up and press them out. See? Okay, so there you go. You need 5 of these blocks. So you get those 5 blocks, and when we get back together, we're going to be at my design wall laying out our quilt because we have all of our pieces together now. Congratulations. I hope you are as excited as I am to get to this point. We have got all of our blocks ready. I have laid out the first 5 rows. I did not lay out the 6th row. It's real important to use your pattern and just follow along as you're laying them out. There's a couple of things to notice. On the pattern, it shows the yellow in the top left-hand corner on all of your sunflowers. Does that mean you have to do that? No. If you want to turn yours different ways, that's fine, but this is what the pattern shows. The pattern also shows the top bee flying up and the lower bee flying down. Again, personal preference, change that up how you want. Everything else is laid out except for the bottom row, because the bottom row, well, besides it's way down there and I'd have to get down to do it, the bottom row is all the stems with the green blocks. So there's not any chance of me getting things in the wrong order, and I can just take these 5 blocks and sew them together and know that they are going to be the bottom row. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to start with these, and then I'm going to just work myself from the bottom up. If you like to work from the top down, you go that way. It doesn't matter. It's all going to be the same system. We are going to just hook all 5 blocks from each row together and then hang it back up. The next 5 and hang it back up. Let me show you how I'm going to take them down. And actually, I'll do the top row. When you are taking your blocks down, mine's on the design wall. You may have it on your bed or the floor, wherever you have big enough that you can lay the whole thing out. This is how you're going to take them down. Is I start on the left-hand side. Now I have pins because my design wall isn't fuzzy enough to hold things up. And I'm going to put the first block on the second block, on the third block, on the fourth block, on top of the 5th block. Just like that. And you can do them all at once and just hang them up in a stack so you keep them in the right order if you'd like. That works really well. So you're not having to get to your block, or if you have it on your bed in your bedroom, it's easier to stack all of your rows. You can put a little note on them that say this is row 2, row 1, row 2, and just do it that way. It just kind of makes it easier so you're not having to go back and forth too many times. But if you're trying to get your steps in, go back and forth. Do what works for you. That's kind of my motto this week, isn't it? Do what works for you. There's row 3. Oop, I have it hooked to row 4. Okay. And just like that. And then when we take these to our table to sew, we're going to just take the first one, put the second one on top of it, and sew it down. You'll see that when we get to sewing. So how about we jump over there and take care of our sewing now? Well, I have changed my mind. I am going to go from the top down so I can show you how to sew them together once you've stacked them. So this is the far left block, top left. I'm going to take my block, set them off to the side. I'll take the top left, then I'll take block number 2, and I'll just bring it over and turn it over on top of the first one, line it up, and sew it. Now, there's a couple of ways, as in every part of quilting, there's a couple of ways you can do this. If this is your first quilt, I would suggest doing them one piece at a time, not doing any fancy trying to get it done quickly. just do the first one. Let me get through this first one. I'm watching to make sure that my seams underneath don't get flipped. My fingers are kind of doing the braille thing for me, so I can feel where things are. And just get all the way to the bottom here. Now, if I were trying to do this in a real hurry, I'd take the next two, stack them the same way, and go and make twosies. But because there are a couple of reasons. There are 5 blocks, so it's an uneven number of blocks. So that would throw off my 2 and 2 and 2 stacks. But also, because we're new, this is a new thing, I'm going to just do them one at a time. Here's my first block, my second block. So I'll take my third block and just lay it on top. And so I will cut between each block. This is a short row. If it were 14 rows across or 14 blocks across on a small blocks but long row, I maybe would do them in pairs and then come back and sew the pairs together. But that is a little bit harder to keep track of. So we're going to just do them one at a time. This is not a huge quilt with a lot of pieces, so it works really well this way. Maybe on another quilt I'll show you that, but on this one we're going to do this. Now I have the 3, so I'm going to just take the 4th one, and this row is pretty simple because 4 of the blocks are this solid block here. If you come to any spot that you can nest seams, you stop and do that. Right here we have a seam right in the center that can be nested, so I pull those together, make sure that they are nesting up nicely, and keep going just to keep those points matching and keep the flow of those seams going. Alrighty, and just one more. See how quickly these rows go together? Come on. There we go. I was getting too excited pushing my cut button there. Okay, and this is the final one for this row. Now, I'm not going to stop and press at this point because I don't want to press with my little iron. This is just too much to really deal with my little iron. So I'm going to do all my rows. Then I will take them over to my big ironing station and I will press them over there. And if you look at your pattern, there is a specific way to press. You are going to press the even rows one way and the odd rows the other way. That is going to make your nesting of your seams, putting your rows together, really, really nice. Okay, so there we go with our first row. We have a blank block. I call that a blank block. It's pieced, but look at how the movement, you can just see the movement in that. Got a B, and then 3 more of the blank blocks. Okay, so we're going to hang this back up on the board, and I'll just go on to row 2, doing the very same thing all the way down through the 6th row. So sew your rows, or sew all of them together in rows, and then meet me back here and we will work on pressing and sewing our rows together. Alrighty, I have moved to my pressing table. We are going to press all of our odd number rows to the right and all of our even number rows to the left. So the easiest way to do that is to get out your big ironing board so that you can do the whole thing at one time. And I like to, when I'm pressing towards the right, I like to lift up the right and make sure that this seam right here is laying nice and flat so that I can just bring my iron in and press it over like that. I'm not running my iron back and forth. I'm moving it over, stopping, picking it up, and moving it over. Then I'm going to come to the next one, make sure it's nice and flat, and do the same thing. Just like that. And continue all the way through each row, getting them pressed the right way. Now I'm going to have to scooch it down a little bit to get this final block. So I have a big ironing space, but not that big apparently. Okay, so we have row 1 all pressed out, pressing towards the right. Now I'm going to just leave this one right here on top, and I'm going to bring row 2 up. And with row 2, we want to press to the left. So we're going to just do it opposite. I'm going to fold it over so I have that row, or that seam right there. Get my iron over here and just let it fold itself out to the left, all the way across. And if I see something that needs a little press, I'm giving it an extra one right now, just because I have it up here at the big heavy-duty iron. And the last one. Now, once I have 2 of them here on top of each other, I'm going to take a moment, and if you've noticed, I don't have any steam spitting out of my iron constantly. I have to tell it to steam. So I'm going to give it a little steam that's going to go through both of them. And that'll just kind of set those seams. Wow, I spit out a lot of water on that one. So we'll just give it a little press to let it stop its little moisture. There we go. I did not really mean for it to get this wet, but thankfully the iron was just going to dry it off for me really quickly. So this is row 1 and 2, and I'm going to set those aside now. I'm not really worried about marking them as to what row they are because there's only 5 or 6 rows and they're fairly simple to keep track of. But if you wanted to at this point, this is row 2, that is row 1, you can flip them together, and let me get my clips and clip the side. This is the side we're going to be sewing, the bottom of row 1, and just put a couple clips nesting those seams that you just pressed, and then they are all ready to sew these 2 together really quickly. Okay, what did I do? Oh no, I got it right. I was going to say, I think I got it wrong, but I didn't. See, don't underestimate yourself. And just put in just a few clips on those seams so you're ready to go. Right there. And then set it aside and do the next 2. And so you will end up with 3 bundles of 2, and you'll be ready to sew them together in the rows. So there we go. I'm going to just set it aside and bring out my next one. So this one is row 3, which means I need to press towards the right. So again, we'll fold it up, feeling with my hand that seam is in the right orientation there. There we go. And you can do this fairly quickly if you have a big enough space. Now, if you had a smaller board that you can't lay them all the way out with, like I can here, I'm going to show you how to do it on a narrower board. Let me get this last one here. So those are to the right. Okay. So this is row 3. Row 4 needs to go to the left. Okay, so let's say I only have a regular ironing board or a smaller one, and I can't lay it out lengthwise like this. I can only lay it out vertically, not horizontally. So, still going to take this in your hand, figure out which way those seams need to go. They need to go this way. So, when I turn it onto my board, I know that those seams need to go up. So I can do the same thing, one seam at a time, lay it down, press it open, move it up. Adjust that seam flat, press it open, and move it up. And so you can still get really quickly doing them one at a time. You just have to decide whether you're pressing up or down. And this one we're doing up. Okay, so now we have this the same direction. Look at how our flowers and their stems are meeting up. So flip it over, put in a couple clips so you have your second one ready to go, and do the same thing with the third one. And you will be ready to sew your quilt top all together. When it is time, when you have sewn your rows and it is time to press again, it doesn't matter whether you press all your seams up or down, as long as you press them all the same direction. So it'll be easier for you to align them when you are quilting them. Okay, there's row 3 and 4. And our final one, row 5 and 6. Again, we're going to go to the right, then we'll go to the left, then we'll pin them together, and we'll take them all back to our sewing table. Well, I have my 3 sets of 2, and because I put the clips, I know exactly which side to sew on. Otherwise, I could get them confused and end up sewing the tops together or something. We don't want to do that. So that's why I put the clips while I was pressing. And now we can just sew down. You may want to stop and use your glue pen to hold your seams together. Anywhere you have a join so that you have a nice smooth seam. And just work your way down the entire length of your strips, making sure that your bottom seams are pointing the correct directions, and keeping a nice straight 1/4 of an inch so that you don't lose any points on your half square triangles and your split 1/4 square triangles, because you want to have nice, strong, sharp points around the edge of your flowers. Okay, now this is row 5 and 6 because I just stacked them as I took them off my pressing mat, and I didn't turn the stack over, so I'm sewing from the bottom up now. It doesn't matter what order you do them in. They're all fairly easy to tell which ones they are once you have them in 2s, because you know that the bottom of the quilt is going to be the row of stems that has the green on it, and you know that your bees are at the top, and that just leaves the center one to position, and you can tell what's the top and the bottom of that because it has the leaves. So not terribly hard to get them in the right order. You just have to be aware and pay attention to making sure you're sewing the bottom of the top one to the top of the bottom one. Does that make sense? The bottom of row 1 has to go to the top of row 2. Otherwise, you will have things turned upside down. And we don't want any flowers going upside down. And we are almost to the end. Being really careful again because we still have some bias edges going on, so we have to be careful that we don't stretch those bias edges as we're sewing things together. Alrighty, almost done with row uh, 5 and 6. Okay, so I'm going to just do my other 2 rows, and then I will lay them out. Oh, look how nice those go together. Look at how nice, when you nest those seams, how nicely those go together. All right, so I'm going to do rows 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, and then I'm going to just hook them all together and we will have a completed quilt top. Well, I have them all into pairs, so now I am taking rows 1 and 2 and hooking them to rows 3 and 4. Now, as you're doing this, align, you have a few more places you're going to have to align as different seams meet up. So you're going to just be real aware of where your seams are and match them up as you get to them. Everything is very square, so it's not going to be a problem matching them up, but you, besides just having the seams between your blocks, see, I had one here in the middle that needed to match up. Now here's the one at the 12-inch block that will need to match up. So I'm just matching as I go. You could absolutely put a bunch of pins and clips in, whatever works best for you. So here is another one. See, this seam needs to match with this one. So make sure you get it nested well. There are some that won't have to match up. Your stem blocks don't necessarily match up with anything. There's one that needs to match in the middle of a seam or a middle of a block. So just be aware of what you're doing, matching as you go, keeping them nice and aligned. Because this is all very similarly, boy, that was an easy one to say, sized. Everything's a 12-inch block. These are 6-inch blocks. Everything is going to match up really well, and when you do have a seam in the middle of the block that has to match, it's going to be real obvious. Here we have our B block that just has a long strip. So we're going to just line that up, and I don't have to worry about matching these other 2 seams. I do need to make sure that they don't get flipped as I come to them. One of them is pointing towards my needle, and one is pressing away. See, this one's away, this one's towards. So I just have to make sure that I don't flip them as I come to them. Did you notice I have this already matched so that if there is any ease that has to happen, it'll happen out throughout the whole block, not just right in the last little bit. That's when you get what looks like a little pucker, is if you're waiting to the last minute to get it aligned. So I'm going to go right through that seam, and then I'm going to show you what I mean. Now, if I just focused on this seam right here and got it aligned, and so to it, and then I focus on this seam right here, get it aligned, and so to it, this area may not match up. So I want to make sure that I am aligning to the farthest thing, the farthest square, and then aligning as I'm going, just so if I have to nudge a little bit, I can spread it out just a little bit, although everything is lining up perfectly. Okay, there we go. Now I have not pressed these horizontal seams yet, because I'm going to just do it all at one time so I can press them all the same direction. Okay, so now I have pieces 1 through 4 attached. There's my bumblebee, down into my first row of flowers, stems, and more flowers. That's really pretty. So now I need to hook the last 2 seams, which are, or the last 2 rows, which are 5 and 6, to the bottom of 1 through 4. So let me grab that off my board. You notice I did flip that around so that I have the bulk of the fabric off to my left. Now, this is the bottom of that and the top of this one. So I'll flip it on top and we'll do our final seam. Again, matching things up as we go. Oop, I just rolled my chair onto it. Okay, so let's just take the time to put in a couple of clips so we don't have to worry. And it just helps keep everything aligned. There we go. If you want, you can put extra clips. You can put as many as you need to keep it aligned. As the more experience you get, probably the fewer clips you will end up using. But at this point, use as many as keeps you comfortable, because sewing is supposed to be enjoyable. And if you are stressing about things, it is not enjoyable. So take a moment and line it up. Give it a clip or your glue pen or a pin or whatever makes you the most comfortable lining these up. Some areas of the block, like right now we're hooking on a flower block, so there are more seams to match, so there'll be more clips there. Some of them will only have the 4 clips at the corners of the blocks. So there we go. Get that one lined up nicely. It's important that your stems come together just right so that you don't look like you have a break in your flower stem. There we go. So see how many I put in there? You can put in as many as you like. I didn't clip the very first part, but we're going to just go for it here. And I have the majority of my quilt up here beside the bed, taking the pull off of it, because remember, we still have those bias edges. So if the quilt is pulling on my lap, it's going to stretch those biases. So I want to keep as much of it up here on my machine, taking the pressure off of this area so that I'm not having either to fight it or have any pull on it. Okay, here we go. And adjust this big bulky thing as you go along. When I take the clip out, I add my finger there to hold it in place. Here's a seam that I need to make sure is flipped the right way. Anchor it under my finger. Okay, this one doesn't have a seam under that I have to align to, so I'm just watching the top. That must be matching up with a with a flower. Up here, feel it, make sure it's perfectly aligned. There we go. Now this one does have a seam underneath that we have to match up, so be careful of that. There we are, right through that. We are halfway done. I'm going to come up a little bit closer before I take this clip off, because now I'm past this little ledge that tends to flip things on me, and I can just keep going. That one doesn't match up with anything, so it can just go right under the needle. Now on this one, We also have the point of our flowers. We want to make sure that we are hitting right. Here is our point. We want to be one stitch to the right of that point so that we get nice sharp points on our flower. This is another point, so when we take this out, we need to make sure that we're hitting. See, our point is right here. So, and you can feel it with your finger. You can feel it drop down right there. So we want to hit right between these two stitches. So you're just kind of feeling your way along, making adjustments as you go, and taking your time with it. Oh my goodness, more dust bunnies. And the final little bit right here. Okay, let's go back over to our pressing station and finish this off. We are going to press this. I'm going to press all of my seams up just because, I don't know, because I chose up. You can do it whichever way. You can look and see which way has less seams that you would press against. I'm just, because this B block here is a solid, that's why I chose this way. Okay, so I'm just with my fingers giving it a little finger press up so that I know that this part of it is ready to go. Everything is smooth, and I will take the iron. I'm lifting and pressing, not sliding and ironing. And I got about halfway across. I'm going to take this time to give it a little press out while I'm here. Although it's going to get wrinkly again as I build on it here because I'm going to pull things over and adjust. So I'm not really concerned that it is perfectly pressed out at this point. We will do that when we're ready to quilt it. Oh, I have a little bit of a thread there. This is a great time to catch threads and clean it up as you go along, because this is when you are looking at it the closest. Okay, and finger press that up. Oh, look how nice those points are. So this is where you can congratulate yourself a lot on having done such a fabulous job with your points, because, oh, they do look good. They do look good. Okay, so I did the first row. Now we'll do this 5 times. I'm just going to move the whole thing up and let it sit on itself and use my thumbs to kind of flip it so I can feel that that seam is down flat right there. And I can continue just pressing up away from it like that. See how that's working? I'm just pressing it up into it. Okay, do you remember when we were sewing and we said that the bee had a little bit of a little fullness because of I stretched the bias? Look how it just kind of fits right in there now. It's not, that fullness is not going to show in any way. Okay, I got those ones done. We'll move it this way and get the last part, and we'll just continue all the way down this quilt to the bottom, and then we will hang it on my design wall behind me, and we will look at it one last time before we prepare it for quilting. Move it up. Flip that little seam so you know it's going the right way. I just find it easier to flip with my fingers. That's why I'm heading upwards than it is to flip down. Whatever works for you. Oh, look how nice my points are matching. Taking the time to pin and to nest those seams makes all the difference in your finished product. I still have a lot of threads that I need to pull, and you know that happens. And there are threads all over my sewing room, so it picks them up from all sorts of places. I imagine some of these were on my ironing table or in front of my ironing table, because it is kind of hanging on the floor a little bit. If you're a quilter, you know you have threads everywhere. I typically have threads on my clothes when I go out. You notice I'm wearing a busy shirt today. That way you don't see the threads. But when I know that I'm going to be going somewhere, I typically, and it's in the wash today, or you would see it hanging on my wall, I have a satinish caftan, moo-moo, whatever you want to call them, that my mother-in-law gave me years ago. It's orange, so I look like a pumpkin wearing it, but the satin, the threads don't stick to. So when I know I have to go somewhere, I'm going to meet somebody for coffee or something like that, I will put that on over my clothes while I'm quilting or sewing so that I can just take it off and know that I'm not going to embarrass my friends when I show up with threads all over myself. Of course, most of my friends are also quilters, so we just sit and laugh at each other. But, there are times when it's just less appropriate to go out with threads all over yourself. So I do try and be aware. Sometimes, not always. Okay, and we're on the last row already. And then this particular quilt does not have any borders on it. So you are going to quilt it and bind. The border is actually going to be the little bit of yellow that you're going to bind it with. But because you are going to be quilting this, whether you're taking it to a long armor or doing it on your own domestic machine, there are a few things you can do to prepare for that, to keep your seams from coming unsewn at the edges. The whole quilting process gives a little pull on things and your little edges here, and you don't want those coming apart. So let's go over to my sewing machine again. I'm going to show you how to deal with that. Then we will hang it on the wall. So as a long armor, and even before I became a long armor and was quilting my own quilts on my domestic machine, I found it very frustrating when these seams will come open just a little bit. And that just naturally happens because we don't backstitch when we're sewing, when we're quilting. So we have these open, or not open, but the ability to open seams all the way around our quilt. So one of my favorite things is when my people just run a safety stitch, kind of a setting stitch, all the way around their quilt. And they do it about 1/8 of an inch in, so it's not going to affect their binding or anything like that. It sets those seams securely. I have a couple of the gals who will just sew over each seam. That's fine. That's fine. I just find it's faster if I just zip all the way around with my machine the entire outside of my quilt, and that has just got everything really secure for me. It's kind of stay stitched some of these extra pieces, especially on this quilt where we have a few biased edges. That is going to prevent them from stretching when I'm quilting it. and it's going to just keep everything nice and square for me, and I will have no problem with seams opening up as I'm adjusting it on my machine. And so your long armor, if you take it to a long armor, will love you if you take this extra. It only takes like 3 or 5 minutes to do it, depending on how big your quilt is. But she or he will really, really appreciate that you take the time to do that. Now, like I said, this is a bias edge here. So by doing this little stay stitching, when I can control the whole thing right here on this table, oh, you know what? I just ran out of bobbin thread. Oh my goodness. Halfway through that. But I will change my bobbin. I won't go back and do that right now because you don't need to see me do that again. But this little bias edge right here, when I put this stabilizing stitch in, it keeps that from stretching as I put tension on it, like rolling it onto my long arm. That will prevent that from stretching and giving me a wonky edge. So I'm being really careful not to stretch it as I'm sewing here. This one's also a bias. This whole side is made up of bias edges. So this is just going to keep it from getting pulled while I'm long arming this quilt. And it will make your final product so much easier to bind because it will be square. So let's come up here and see. Okay, so here is one that I have not yet sewn, and see how stretchy that is? You can just get it really to curve. Now I have sewn this one, and now I can pull it, and will it pull a little bit? Yes, but it's much more stable. It's not giving that curve when you pull it. So it just stabilizes that edge of the quilt so nicely. It keeps your seams going the right way. I know I'm just talking a lot about it, but I just find it one of the most helpful things that a quilter can do for me as a long armor, or when you're doing your own. It is just going to make it so much easier on you to quilt and keep everything squared up. So just take the few minutes it takes to do this, because I'm talking a lot, we're about 4 minutes in. But if I weren't talking to you and zipping along as quick as I can versus being slow and meticulous while I'm talking, this would be done in 5 minutes. So do that for yourself and for your quilter, and you will see all the difference in the world. Okay, so before we go on and talk about the whole quilt, I need to show you and have you laugh with me on something. So as careful as I was being, look at what I did. There's the bottom of the quilt. They're all perfect. They're lovely, lovely, lovely. Now look at what happened up here. I sewed number 1 and 2 backwards. The flower in the top corner over there, that flower should be right over here at this stem. So I sewed the top of row 1, 2 to the top of row 3, 4. So guess who has a meeting with Jack the Ripper to get that turned around and sewn the proper way. And then we will discuss, well, we can discuss other things right now. Look at the background here. See how we were talking about having solid blue blocks versus having the pieced ones. Look how nicely that gives movement in that quilt. It just makes a very subtle, beautiful design in the background. All of your flowers point the right direction. If you've done it right, and of course, then there is a time. Look how easy it is to do that. I have sewn all the way around the edge, so it has given me that very secure outside edge. I'm just really, really pleased with this quilt. So as soon as I get that turned the right way, we will talk about what we need to do for the backing. Well, I'm back and I did it right this time. Look at there. My bees where it's supposed to be, my flowers where it's supposed to be. This one's going right. Everybody looks happy. I'm so happy that this is completed. Look, isn't that wonderful? Aren't you proud of yourself? I think you should be. So all you have left to do now is to make your backing. You have 2 pieces for your backing, this pretty lovely green. Remember, when you are sewing these together, you are going to sew them together, selvage edge to selvage edge. However, I need you to remember, I'm going to come up close, to cut off your selvage first, because that is woven differently than the rest of the fabric. It's got the double from it folding over the edge. It's just a little stiffer. It doesn't have the nice play that the rest of the fabric does. So you want to take this off, or you're going to have a seam across the back that's just it's going to feel different. It's not going to play as nicely. So cut it all the way off. And then when I'm sewing my selvages together, what was a selvage together, I like to give it a good 1/2 inch seam allowance so that when I press it open, it stays open. Sometimes with the narrower seam allowances, as you start layering things, they don't always stay open where you want them. So a little bit extra fabric there just helps it to stay in place. You have ample amount of fabric. You will have plenty left over in order to do that. So trim your selvage off. You don't have to trim it off both sides. Just trim it off one side because that'll be the bottom and the top. So it doesn't matter if it's there because that'll get trimmed off when you are trimming up your quilt at the end. So, and the other thing you will have to do is piece your binding strips. I just love this yellow binding. Isn't that going to look so lovely right there? We'll just give it a little bit. Isn't that going to be cute? So sew them together. If you need a refresher on binding, go in and find the binding video on how to piece a straight binding, and you'll be good to go. So congratulations, you did it.